Welcome back to the Will List Podcast. How you guys doing, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah, we're doing great. We're gonna have a good show tonight. I promise you. It's gonna be very, very educational. We're gonna learn about a lot. But the show is called The Effects of Incest in the World and how it destabilized humanity. You know, we're in a good place as far as how we have been shuffled and moved around, as far as how genetics have been literally shared by everyone else, everyone in the world. But right now, we're very settled again in a lot of remote places. A lot of remote places. In some places, they even practice this deliberately because they want to remain remote, or they feel as if these are absolute tools of legacy or tools of wealth, mainly when it comes to Caucasians or Indians, and some other races, and even some places here in the West where they practice that form of, well, it's global. I mean, in some instances, it's global. People practice some form of incest, and it's not a good thing. Is I think it's pretty grotesque. Actually, I don't think you should marry into your family members. I don't think that should even. I think it should be a crime. I think it's crazy. I think it lacks the forethought of what your kids are gonna act like and look like when they find out their uncle is their dad. That's we're gonna get into it, but not that fast. Let me brace myself. This is a hard subject to cover because um, I want to be scientifically correct. I want to be logically correct, and I also want to be when it comes to this thing we call DNA. You shouldn't be with people where you share DNA. I don't give a damn, cousin. I'm not think it's just for your children, for society, for the things that will and can go wrong with the life expectancy, and also dealing with genes that are similar with each other. That has proven to not be a good pairing. I mean, yeah, they say third cousin and back. Yeah, but it's your family, man. Ah, yeah, I'm not. I would never, in my mind, I could never subscribe to no notions of that. I just don't think it's favorable for the longevity of humanity. I don't think it's very favorable at all. I think is like, again, I think it's quite grotesque, and it doesn't give you the ability to you know strengthen your DNA by respectable houses. But this is just my little interlude. I have some whip moments to share tonight. This is not just a ramble. This is just that kind of just gave you a little synopsis of what I'm gonna talk about tonight. So let's get to the first whip moment. See, a lot of times when it comes to incest and things of that nature, that shit was used as a weapon. And I think it's always used as a weapon. It's sex as a weapon. And it's also a weapon against your own kind, your own genetic um your genetic growth or fundamentals, people that are from similar but different houses, because you can have a house of people with an array of DNA as well. Let's be clear. When people know how to amalgamate, when they use science of how to really blend, and that's why you had to deal with, in some instances in the old world, they had what you would call arranged marriages, so that these things wouldn't happen. And in some instances, it was bilateral. You see, some instances arranged marriages was making sure you marry into the family and making sure you keeping wealth within the family and making and I think that was the degradation of genes, because when you think about those people were mating with each other, and those families were blending with each other, and even in the times of ancient Egypt. In ancient Egypt, those practices were used, and some instances in Africa, um, and even some instances in the Americas. So it's when civilization is being threatened, challenged, broken down, And there has to be some form of moving forward. But when you're in the times of a multitude and a multiplicity society of people, and even when you're dealing with a multitude of people that are like you, say if you just want to be with a black American. Say if they say, I want to marry into my realm of people, or if somebody says they're Asian, or they're not just Asian, but they're from Taiwan and a Taiwanese, or if they're from China, they want to marry Chinese into the culture, or if they're Caucasian, they want to marry into the culture. There's nothing wrong with things like that, especially when your people are under duress. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think anything is wrong with that because when it comes to as far as when you talk about FBAs, Aboriginal blacks, indigenous blacks in America, you have to understand we have a very strong culture that we let a lot of people into, and they started dirtying it up. They started disrespecting us as if we had no origin, no background, as if we haven't created, and they clearly didn't know our history. That's why I simply on this show, the Will This podcast, the part of the a part of me, a part of why I practice a high intellectual fortitude of will, research, and understanding how to try my today's culture, what's going on today with history, with how to make sure you understand the reason why my mind thinks in those uh, pivotal ways is because I use vision and I'm a spiritual being, but I can also see what's going on in the world. So to reach back into antiquity and bring some of these same concepts forward, you can see where you get these different patterns and these different cycles. And then you understand how none of these things are new. They are old, regurgitated, rebuilt, intercepted, taken, or completely revamped to fit the narrative of the thief or the person that stole. Really, even the banking, the financial system. That was the Rothschilds are the face of it, but that Tartarian banking system existed to stabilize exchange in the world. That's a very valuable extracted that was taken, from the world of humanity to make us become a whole dominated system of slavery. But if the Tartarian banking system, then they couldn't dominate us. If we went back to the global exchanging system of where you had real free enterprise, where you can create products, but you can also have ways of everybody not there was more privacy embedded, more there were more aspects of uh ownership outright other than changing the rules and implementing third party and implementing Doge systems and even systems like the IRS and all of these other uh, algorithmic taxation systems that extract wealth from the people, perpetuating our slavery, making us work harder, way harder than what you should have to. It's the reason why you have supermarkets because you don't have any female trees all over the place anymore. Farming used to be in your backyard and things of that nature, and having meat markets to where people were able to go out, hunt, and actually sell their products. You know, even though the supermarket is not a bad idea, it becomes horrible when they raise the prices up and put tariffs on everything and becomes a global market where the things that you rely on, you can actually grow in the country, but you'd rather pay for a trade. The reason why things have to be aligned different in the world and different alignments have to be made and different exchanges have to be made because the way we was doing business before made completely no sense. It only benefited uh, an apparatus that had no leverage to bring only a selected few capitulators to the table to make a mass amount of money in order to keep the rest of us begging and feeding, robbing people to pay Paul. I'm explaining things to you because you got to understand how this power came about. Let me explain. Let me get to. Yeah, we're reading from this book right here, The Power of the Vatican. This is where we're reading from, okay? You're going to understand where I'm coming from. That was just one moment. Page 54. Who am I to judge? Page 54. But also, I want to read. A few things I want to read to you. Who am I to judge? 54. Let's go there first. Who am I to judge? Giovanni Marie Vain repeats the phrase, still apparently trying to find a deeper meaning. Who am I to judge? Is a new doctrine, a phrase improvised more or less at random. Vain doesn't really know what to think. Who is he to judge? The phrase, in the interrogative form, was uttered by Pope Francis on the night of the 28th of July 2013 in a plane bringing him back from Brazil. Broadcast around the world, it immediately became the most famous phrase of the pontificate. In its empathy, it is very like Francis, the gay-friendly pope who wants to break with the homophobia of his predecessors. Giovanni Marie Fain, whose job consists not so much of committing on the Pope's words as relaying them, remains cautious. He gives me the official transparent to the improvised talk in the course of which Francis delivered his line. Once is put back into the contents of Francis' reply, it is absolutely certain. He tells me that I can be read in a gay-friendly. That's what Vane and his academic be called Professor and the director of Osservatore Romano, a newspaper in the Holy See. This official daily paper is published by 5 languages, and it offers very located to the very heart of the Vatican. The Pope talks a lot this morning. Vane explains when I arrive. His newspaper publishes all interventions by the Holy Father, his message, his writings in the Vatican Privata. We're an official newspaper but also have a freer part of editorials and cultural, more independent writings, Vane adds, knowing that his room for maneuvers is very small. Perhaps to free himself from the constraints of the Vatican and to show a spirit of mischief, he is surrounded by Tintin figures. His office is filled with posters of Black Island, King Autokars, Scepters, Minotaurs, Tintin, Snowy, and Captain Haddock. A strange invasion of pagan objects in the heart of the Holy See. And to think that I never occurred to Hegel to do a Tintin in the Vatican. I spoke too fast. Vane picks me up on it, telling me about the long article in the Observatory Murano about Tintin, which is, he said, to prove that the spit in the Mincent's character and memorable expellatives, the young Belgian reporter is a Catholic hero inspired by Christian humanism. The Observatory Romano is a pro-Belgrogullo Under Francis, it was a pro Ratzinger. Under Benedict the 16th explains the diplomat based in the Holy See. Another colleague and Observator Romano confirms that the paper exists to diffuse all scandals. The silence of the Observatory Romano also speaks. Vane tells me, not without humor, it is, of course, is my investigation to I would often visit the people's papers. Professor Vane would agree in an interview that the record 5 times of the record, even more often, it was 6 of the colleagues in charge of the Spanish, English, and French editions. It was in Brazilian journalism, Scampanani, TV channel, Golobu, who dared to confront the people head of the question of the gay lobby. The scene played on a plane on the way back from Rio to Rome. It had ended in an improvised press conference, and the Pope was tired, also flanked by Federico Lombardi, his spokesman. One last question. Lombardi asked in a hurry to bring the session to an end. Is it Scamperani raises her hand. Here I quote at length the dialogue on the floor by the original transcript given to me by Giovanni Marie Vane. I would like to request permission to ask a slight delicate question. Another picture had gone around the world in Mr. Rica, as well as information on his private life. The Holy Father, I would like to know your plan to do what you're going to do about this. How would your holiness expect to approach the problem, and how do you plan to confront the question of a gay lobby? Where Manager Rica is concerned, the Post reply, I have done what the Canaan laws recommended doing, an investigation, preliminary inquiry. The investigation has not thrown up anything that is being accused of. We found nothing. That's my answer. And there is something I would like to add. I see that often in the church beyond the case, but in the case as well, people look for examples of the sins of the youth and to publish them. No crimes then. Crimes are something, but abuse of minors is no. Abuse of minors is no. Oh man, did you hear this? Do you hear this? Let me read this again. Church beyond the case, but the case as well. People look for examples, the sins of youth, and publish them. No crimes then. Crimes are something. The abuse of minors is a crime. No sins. But if a layperson or a priest or a nun has committed a sin and then converted, the Lord forgiveness, but lets them come back to your more concrete question, you are talking about a gay lobby. Well, a lot of written about a gay lobby. I haven't yet found anyone in the Vatican who has given me the identity card with gay written on it. They say there are some, I believe, that we find yourself with such a person, you might distinguish the fact of being gay from that of constituting a lobby, because not all lobbies are good. This one is bad. If a person is gay and seeks the Lord, if they demonstrated goodwill, who am I to judge? There you have it right there. There you have it. The problem isn't having a tendency and turning the tendency into the lobby. That is a more serious problem. And as far as I'm concerned, many things is asking for questions. Thank you very much. He got the hell up out of there fast. Real fast. Real fast. Okay. I got another one for you too. But I really want to go to the other book first. I just had to let you know that was just right there in 2013 when Pope Francis had to get the hell up out of there because he was gay. He was a gay pope. And the thing about that is the when you think about the Catholic community and you also think about the Latin community and how, if you look at even at this what I told you about that whole Super Bowl situation with Bad Bunny, and now confirming that the boy is gay, he's bisexual, whatever he is, but he's out there. He's completely out there like that. So people, if that's what you know, man, that's I I'm not saying it don't exist in Black American culture, but that's something new that's like prevalent for I think younger people. My generation is very much so taboo, but it did exist then too. It did. But it's just the fact that these guys are trying to make this like it's okay. Like it's and I'm not ever gonna be the one that's gonna be the hater of anyone, first and foremost. But I do understand order and I do and as far as I'm concerned, I know that male and female are absolutely joined and compatible in matrimony from inception of how we operate and how we supposed to be the orchestrators and also the custodians of this planet. So let me move to the next whip moment because I just wanted to give you that tidbit as to why you have confusion and you have these light, uh, unprofessed laws that they use as this gray area because I think we're gonna get to the whip moments. Let's keep going because this also leads to and also has a lot to do with the effects of incest as well in the world because when sex is introduced at a very young age, that's I think I think that could be a bit inappropriate if the education is not there. But let me get to some whip moments. Some people may disagree, and that's fine. But let me get to the next whip moment. See, I feel like when you lack education, this the next whip moment is called it's a deduction and legacy. Period. Yes, people have the right to do and choose and be whoever the hell they want to be. But understand I know that this is a new world that people live in, and to some people's eyes, some things are just not important anymore. And I beg to differ, but I'm an older cat, man. But I just like respect. You know what I'm saying? So being able to deal with anybody, be respectful first and foremost. That's why I do not lead with disrespect on the show. I try to make corrections about how to operate and deal with people specifically, but at the same time, I don't tolerate disrespect. So you have to, when things are addressed, you have to see it how it is and call it how you see it. Like when it comes to, a degrading of your legacy, is when you are like Diddy. Diddy is a prime example of degrading your legacy. Why? He props himself up as a straight man, and he's not a straight man. And to see him in court being extremely embarrassed because your business is aired out, but you just could have been like anybody else. You done created half of the gay people that's out here now. You done created the way you operate, and then you want secrets, but you do so much blatant things that make you fit that bill. And then the crazy part about celebrities are the fact that you act like your secrets are not out. These secrets and whatever's being told now, it was supposed to be conspiracy like or conspiracy theories back in the day. But I'm like, no, I've been knew all of this was the truth. This is nothing new. If you understood anything about history and have been following culture, society, and these new grifting mechanisms, what they call these grifters, these are these pivots. These are these new ideological methodologies that they want people to think that they got free will or a free way of thinking when you're just being manipulated and toyed with. You play a position from the middle, which makes you vulnerable. Anybody that plays any position from the middle, you're vulnerable. Because if you're not playing it from the root, or if you're not orchestrating from the root, which a lot of people do not have those capabilities, because Half of you like, what the fuck is the root? What is a root? What is he talking about? The root. You I'm gonna remind you of what the root is real quick. You're the root, but you also have to be rooted. You're the root, but you also have to be rooted. Rooted in what? Rooted in who you truly are. What makes you you? A lot of people forget that. They miss those specific um, um, fundamentals. You know, a lot of people associate celebrity. They love looking at celebrities like, oh my God, I want to be them. I wish I had their life. I don't. Man, if you now you see these people that you have been putting on pedestals and praising, man, these people are not. They're humans that are they got they're humans that are do inhumane shit. They're humans that do very inhumane things. They ain't got all that wealth for nothing. You know, you ever heard of my uncle Ed tell me, my pops used to always tell me, hey man, the the bigger the paper, the bigger the freak. Matter how much, but most people, you know, when they get more money, they freaky ass desires come out like you would never seen before. Like people do some wild shit then because they feel like I can't be touched. I get to be who I am now. That's why you see some cats, you know, they come out as gay. They'll go out here and well, I get to be me now. Nigga, you no, you ain't just got like that. You been like that. Let's be clear because some men are just men. But then you see some men, you know, they have humble beginnings and they become this they get a little paper now. See, they become a whole different kind of person. They build and create something new. They make themselves up. And then some of y'all have seen some people even on YouTube become different people. As soon as they get that YouTube monetization, they change clothes. You can't blame them. I mean, this is hard work. This is not an easy feat. I wanna get there myself. So I appreciate you tuning in to the Wheelers Podcast. I appreciate you subscribing, liking, and watching the long shows on YouTube. That would help me out gratefully. I would appreciate it so much. I really do. You can also go to the wheelerspodcast.com and purchase some merch. That would be great. That's how you support me. That's how you support the show. You can do that. That would be great. You know, it's nice quality. I don't put trashy things out. You know, it's very cost appropriate. Let's say that much. But also, it's a good thing to just think about the effects you have, on the world, and then you think about those remote locations, like people that I'll even start with America because we got to get back to the origin of the show. Because we're dealing with the root causes of shit, man. So the thing is, one thing that I knew, and I grew up with my grandmama. She told me, she said, hey, you don't lay with family. You understand? You can't like your brother. You can't like your brother, your sister, your cousins. Those are your family members. Y'all can't like each other. You know what I'm saying? Your brother and sister can't like each other. You know what I'm saying? Cousins are like brothers and sisters. So we grew up with those elements in the South. Everybody that I know. That's what I mean by likeness culture. Like that sex is sacred when you grew up in the South. You know what I'm saying? You grew up with that implanted ideology of now I ain't gonna say marriage because I had some my grandfathers they used to always talk about coochie and since I was 5 I've been knowing about the girl about the woman and so I grew up I was always a woman lover, love I always been a woman lover. So it's that was kind of like some from a kid, I used to be a little bashful when I saw pretty ladies that I like. So, and little girls, it's like I had a crush on. I used to try to touch on her booty and stuff. I was a little fresh. I love me some girls ever since I was a little kid, man. So it's always been like that. But back to the story, man. But we grew up, my grandparents, we knew not to touch our cousins or touch each other and do them kind of experiments and you know, um, that was a no-no because you never wanna you knew not to be attracted to your your family. That's why you had family reunions. That's why we had making sure you know your kin because we had so many big families. And then a lot of people had to come clean because if you was cheating on Sat May around the corner, Johnny May, you was cheating with somebody, or you know, old girl was, the slide and gave old what's mask, you know what I'm saying, and then that baby coming out looking like you know, John John, then you got to come clean. Oh, hey, that's mine. It went down one night. We was on that oil, and you know what I'm saying. We slipped up. You know what I'm saying. Shit went down, man. Hey, man, you got to tell the truth where that baby child come from. So it was a lot of that shit that broke up a lot of families. There was a lot of those type of equations that broke up families. That's why a lot of families in the South don't talk to each other and don't talk about some things because some shit's so painful. You know, uh, somebody done, eliminated somebody and, they don't want to tell you who it is. And then uh, turns out it's such and such daddy and you don't want them to grow up shame. And see, a lot of things was about hiding shame and telling lies and hiding the truth. And a lot of that was about what that was going on in the early 1900s, man. And I was born in 1980, so I heard a lot about a lot of shit that existed before me, and family fights and feuds, and the reason why such and such don't deal with such and such. That shit be coming. That shit be evolving. That shit be coming right back around when you don't deal with them. Those family issues and ties. And then, in some instances, it's quite natural for some families to grow apart when people grow up. In some instances, it's good for you to grow apart and to grow up as well, So it makes you stronger because at least you understand how to survive and uh, how to stand on your own. But at the end of the day, a lot of times when it comes to family feuds, it has to do with you know, somebody not valuing people properly. It has to do with that people want to treat you like a kid for life. Like you can't never grow up. You know what I'm saying? So that's another one of them problems that you have that I think we have to stop doing to our children. Don't always do the shit that was done to you. We have to improve ourselves and improve our ideological thinking so that when these kids are younger, they can do more, they can accomplish more mentally. If you beat them down and shut them down and make their thinking or don't solidify who they are, they'll forever be like a bunch of older people not knowing who they are, not identifying, being unsure, not being confident. And, a lot of times people struggle with this in their later ages in life. Some people get it, some people never do. And that's what creates also people that will um, consult with lying and being deceitful and being divisive and deviating from shit because they have discrepancy. Build the best version. That's you trying to not, but you're also trying to run away from who you really are, and you really don't even know yourself. So it's a perplex. That's what you call a reprobated mind. You know, you're a reprobated mind. You don't know what you want. You don't know how to get it, and you don't know where to get it from. So that's where people go to robbing and thieving and taking from other people because they don't know what they want. They just know they want something. Something to ease the pain, something to look cool, something to identify with. You know, they can't even look in the mirror. They just want to be able to say, I own something. or I have something, and they don't give a shit who they get it from. So, again, a reprobated mind, a mind is a waste. You always got to remember that, people. Is a big thing to waste. That you use your brain. But see, the thing is, some people use their brain to do shit like this. To invent race. Like it's some Harry Potter type shit. See, this is what the white race did. They did some Harry Potter shit. That's why they get Harry Potter and creating languages, Game of Thrones. All of this shit is predicated on this right here. How they invented themselves out of the shit that they deserve, which is a little turmoil sometimes. But hey, damn, my light just went out on my ass. I think it did. Damn. Gotta get another light, yeah. Let me see something here. Hold on. See if I can plug it in. Something else got it. There we go. It's cool. We good. So let me get to this the beginning of this book, because this book is actually written by Theodore Allen. So get to the table of contents on y'all for this book here. The Anatomy of Racial Oppression, Social Control, and the Intermediate Straits, Ireland. Okay, Protestant ascendancy and white supremacy. Social control from racial to national oppression. Ulster, Anglo-America, Osler, right lore. The sea change. How the sea change was wrought. Appendices, the chronological finding aid. So we're going to get into this. But we're going to start with the anatomy of racial oppression. 27. All right, this is how it starts, ladies and gentlemen. However, one may choose to define the term racial and concern the historian only in it relates to the pattern of oppression, subordination, subjugation, exploitation of one set of human beings by another, Orlando pattern. It is slavery and social deaths. Take the racial factor to mean the assumption of innate differences based upon real or imagined physical or other differences. But as I have pointed out in the introduction, as an assumption does not an oppressor make. Presumptively, the objects of racial oppression, however the term is defined, are capable of the same sorts of assumptions. David Bryan, Davis, explaining slavery in the United States says racial dissimilatory was offered as an excuse for that. That is true enough and consists with Patton's definition of the racial favor. But again, excuses are not nor automatic promotion to oppressor, but racial oppression is excused. It must automatically promote the oppressor before the racial oppression is executed. It must first be imposed and sustained. That is what needs to be explained. Unfortunately, racial dissimilarity is the conventional phenotypical sense that proves to be more banana peel than stepping stone. Historically, racial dissimilarities have not only been artificially used, they are themselves artificial. In colonial Hispanic America, it was possible for a person, regardless of phenotype, physical appearance, to become white from purchasing a royal certificate of whiteness. With less formally but equal success, one may move from one racial category to another in today's Brazil, where it is said money whiteness. On the other hand, the United States organizing principles of society is that no such whitening of recognized, rather whitening by genetic variation on a simpler wealth. From 1890, the Portuguese immigrated, settled in Guyana, British Guyana, who learned that he or she was not white, but a sibling of the same person arrived in the United States in the same year, would learn that by the sea change, he or she had become white. And in the Spanish census, in Cuba, Mexico, Indians and Chinese were classified as white. But in 1907, the United States Census and the classes that groups be colored, according to Virginia law in 1860, a person with but three white grandparents was a Negro. And in 1907, having no one that 15th on the 16th white great grandparent entitled one to some classification in 1910. The limit was, let's talk about this real shit here. Anatopic, anatotic, asymptotic. Every person to whom there was a centrable any Negro blood was to be deemed a colored person. As of 1983, the National Center for Health Statistics effectively followed in 1910 Virginia principle by classically any person as black as either a person was black, and at the same time, its Texas of race classification determined that the race of the father prior to 1970, the set in Louisiana court's decision that back in the late 1700s had upheld that the legal concept that any traceable amount of African ancestry defined as Negro in 1970, racial classification became the subject of hard bargaining in Louisiana state legislature. The conservative held for more than 164th, but more enlightening oppression of forced of comprised of 132 as the as a re- requisite proportion of Negro forebears, the principle that was upheld by the state Supreme Court in 1974. By considering a notion of racial oppression in the terms of subjugate of substantive and operative elements, namely oppression, it is possible to avoid the contradictions and howling absurdities that result in attempts of a split genetics in society or sociology. By examining racial oppression in a particular system of oppression, like gender oppression and class oppression and national oppression, we find a firmer footing of analyzing racial slavery by the invention and perpendicular function of white race. For the confronting the theory that racial oppression can be explained in terms of phenotype, the old ace in the hold of racial um, apologetics, apologetics. This approach was preserved the basis of a consistent theory that organic interconnection of racial classes, national and gender oppression. So I could read the Irish analogy, but in our conditioned minds, the attitude of behavior towards Anglo Americans, towards African Americans and American Indians have an readily recognizable character of racial oppression. But when racial oppression is defined as the term of oppression of operational principles of exclusion of the Irish case, and it seems to be wholly arbitrary. The exclusion of especially deplorables, when particularly by European American scholars, ignores the case to where whites um, consciously on the part of the observer at least likely or affected the drawing of a conclusion, as need to know that there were white, cannot possibly serve to be explained the attitude of English towards the Irish, the history of English and rule in Ireland, and the rule and of the Irish in America, present intrusive parallels and divergencies for the understanding of race, and as sociogenetic rather to the uh, phylogenetic category of racial slavery and in a systematic of social control. So you see, that was a whole lot of words that was pretty much saying this was basically people creating and gathering data and making sure they put this oppressive system in order and intact on purpose. That alone comes with the Rothschild financial systems, is how these systems maintain and sustain white supremacy, white order, and global dominance. We're gonna get into another show, but let me get to the next what moment. I gotta get to. We're gonna get into more of this in another show. We're gonna get into more of this book right here. That's for sure. So let me get to the next moment. The downgrade of man and mankind. That's just what I was explaining. See, that all goes back to what this is, the invention of whiteness. Mediocrity and downgrading of humanity as a whole. As a whole, downgrading humanity, the mindset, the psyche, and the ideological behavior of control and dominance. This they needed all that's why everything went from regional. People that never identified with race. This became the global construct because it was perpetuated, it was enforced, and it was made to be. It wasn't supposed to be, but this was the ideological perspective. And I got another book. Oh, did I bring it downstairs? I think I took it downstairs, but hold on, wait a second. Where we at? Oh, it says it in this book here. Right here. Okay. Yeah. This is another confirmer. These books go hand in hand with each other. Right here. Hold on. What's going on with my TikTok? I'm froze. All right. Let me turn my Wi-Fi on. Okay. Here we go. These go hand in hand. Right here. They go hand in hand with each other. Chosen People of the Caucasus. I'm telling you, this book is a doozy. This is the one I wanted to give you a little bit more information out of as well. Neanderthal Caucasoids. So let me explain. Let me read this to you. Neanderthal Caucasoids and mountain men. Okay. Let me read you what you're dealing with. No one can say with certainty how long modern humanity has existed or when it originated, since most of the man-tending creators, and there were a lot of them, seem to have arisen in Africa. That's what they say from this perspective. It seems reasonable to assume that modern man also came out of Africa. Some recent studies, and that's true, to a fault in the way the world is constructed now. Yes, that's true. Just for now, let's just say that much. So I have to explain this because this book has a little age on it, but it still has some very valid inquiry. So here we go. DNA, actually modern women, since indicated in modern man, actually modern woman first emerged about 225,000 years ago in what is so-called the Sahara Desert in Africa, but earlier studies and by scientists who have actually invented the DNA. There we go. Who actually invented the DNA distancing method suggested that the primary races of humanity had disappeared and differentiated as long as 300,000 years ago and were perhaps descendants of a slightly different kind of man ape, which is a lie. The important point is that at the time, no one knows what happened to the propagate modern man all over the world. That's the black people. But here we go. And I know he's being facetious. All over the world, humanity may have radiated from one geographical center, probably Africa, or not quite. Humans may have migrated to various regions, came modern man in separate, which left genetic isolation, geographical or racial markers upon them. However, one thing is certain: climatic disaster befell humanity in Europe and Western Asia, and the world has become reaping the consequences since. The world has been reaping the consequences since. According to the conclusion of most physical anthropologists, there were roughly modern Europeans in uh, for Chevad, France, and Carapine, Yugoslavia, before onset of the last European ice age. These people who lived in Europe for from about 225,000 years ago until about 100,000 years ago. No one can say whether they were Caucasian or not. They were not Caucasian at that time, just to be clear. They were not. About 100,000 years ago, the climate in the northern hemisphere changed. Europe and Western Asia became much colder than presently. Central Asia remained about the same and seasonally extreme continental climate, and with the northern area of the Far East and Asia and Alaska actually became warmer. Modern humanity in Europe and the for Tekivod and Carapina people fled southward, probably into Sahara Africa, but some European and the Neanderthals stayed behind to adapt culturally and physically to the cold. The origins of the Neanderthal are naturally in dispute. Some anthropologists lean towards the theory that they were uniquely European developed, no, while others think that they may have come into Europe from the east, but without pointing to any known human population from which they could come from. It seems fairly certain that before the last European ice age began, that 100,000 years ago, the Neanderthals coexisted with more modern human-looking people represented from the for ten for Tekivod and the Carapin people. The Iceman Inheritance discusses the various theories of Neanderthal origins in detail. What is important here is that Neanderthal physical appearance and Neanderthal psychology. The basic fact is that the Neanderthal is that there are a cold adapted kind of man, and their physical adaptations became more extreme as the Arctic conditions of the warm and galactical period intensified. In general, they adapted to the cold in exactly the same time or the same way that other Arctic mammals have. Important part of what a zoologist calls Allen's rule. The Arctic animals tend to adopt a spherical shape. They are like plump. This is because the spherical contains the massive the maximum possible internal volume, which the least possible surface or area of geometrical figure. Therefore, Arctic animals tend to be plump so that their body can heat is conserve to radiate away from the excessive surface area. The Neanderthal follows a common rule of Arctic adaptations. They become progressively more stocky, and squat creatures, and short stature, but very massive built. Neanderthals may have been rather primitive looking, but they were not stupid. Their average cranial capacity exceeded the average modern man, but they had a large brains and they were very intelligent, but big brain gave them a very big head. And a very big head for short, stocky bodies gave them physical appearances that would be called grotesque by today's standards. Their faces were about twice as large as a modern face, but on a creature only about 5'7" tall, mostly for large males and some female Neanderthals. A skeletal indicator for women were about in life and only about 4'11" in height. So that's like a Marjorie Taylor Greene. That's what a modern Neanderthal would look like, Marjorie Taylor Greene, but with probably a little bit more hair. But modern being from European would be more like look like a Marjorie Taylor Greene. The shape of a Neanderthal's head is distinct. They have a long skull with a huge back of the neck, considerably with a low and low, broad skull with tended hanging. Their ears usually show two lips down the center of the line of both major cranial sculptures, meetings the major skull bones. But the most distinctive feature of Neanderthal's head was their nose. Neanderthal's nose is very large with an equally large nostril and protrudes from the face like a kind of a blunt beak. The rest of their face protrudes forward to catch up, like this, you know. The rest of their face protrudes forward and catch it up, but the formidable nasal development This large nose was a special adaptation to the cold, to take air in as far as possible, away from the brain, to come and the complex system of Neanderthal sinuses. Further, the warmer the air is the appropriation of the brain. Neanderthal's feet and hands were massive and powerful, but fully human. The Neanderthal footprint preserved in the clay in the Italian cave reveals that very short, broad foot with a plantar index of 1.61, translated into modern shoe size. Um, this is a triple E and is not normally manufactured. So that's a big ass, that's a wide ass foot that they don't even make shoes for. That's pretty much what that is. So the Iceman inheritance argued that the physique and adaptation determines that the ice age climate conflicted with the sexual adaptation has already been evolved in humanity order to absorb the aggression caused by the timing and territory conceptualization. With the Neanderthals, some of their sexual adaptations were almost wholly erased. Others were partially nullified, and still others were grotesquely over exaggerated in an attempt to retain their functions on an extremely cold adapted body. That means they had uh what you would call like a button dick. That's kind of what they had, like a button dick. Like it's probably like 3 inches, a little old. That's probably what they had. They say the cold, kind of took it away from them. That's kind of crazy, right? All right, enough about Neanderthals. This book tells you just a lot of the truths about how they are. But this book right here, Theodore Allen did a wonderful job on this book. And Michael Bradley did a hell of a job on this book because he also wrote the Iceman in here. So these are authors that they give you nothing but the facts about actual equations, and that's what makes you more knowledgeable and understanding about how people are, how they are. All right, next what moment is the effects of how could equal instability, unstable mindsets. The effects of how incest increase the instability of mindsets as well. So it's recorded that it's a lot of countries, European countries, that still practice incest. They say the Rothschild family practices incest. There's a lot of people, they keep the money in the family. So these certain unhealthy practices are practiced now, but it does have you will have physical ailments. That's why people, if you think about it, a lot of the most expensive, most grotesque industry, mark my words, on the planet right now, it's organ transferring, organ and body parts, organs and body parts. That is the most. That's where the money is, right? That's what's the most expensive thing you can get right there. Organ parts, organs, human trafficking. But human trafficking is extremely vital for rich people simply because of those two things. They need body parts and they need sheeple. So they're different. They don't play on the same scale. We go to the supermarket. They need special types of elixirs that have to do with, baby blood. And, y'all thought that Q and they were on to something. It's Epstein files of how people are operating, man. But this is what I'm saying. That vile way of thinking, where you can't even these people have different forms of operating. Period. These files are grotesque. I hope you look them up and look it up on my own. But I really put it out here. That shit is terrible. It's a hard read. It's hard to get through. I think you should look them up for yourself, and or even people are actually they doing shows talking about them. They talking about these. So if you're not like me, I don't want to listen to that shit. I have had to stomach some of it. It's pretty It's pretty fucking atrocious. It's pretty damn terrible. So, and in a lot of ways, it's absolutely the same things that were happening when we talk about books like I got The Delectable Negro. Things are not new. When I read you the Delectable Negro, yeah, it's over here somewhere, but I don't even want to read that right now because you need to check out as well. The Delectable Negro. It'll tell you how this human trafficking, body parts, sexual exploitation, um, uh, um, unwarranted sexual upheaval, um, hedonism, which still goes on in a lot of the islands and places like that today. That was pretty much what that was another lesson that I learned and what I did know about the Puerto Rico Dominican Republic. He basically showed a lightweight display of hedonism at the Super Bowl. That's what Bad Bunny did. A lightweight display of hedonism, because that's how they get down. So these it's very very prevalent in the Latin community as well. As well as incest, little hedonism, prostitution. That lie they distribute a lot of lying in their cultures, and it's the reason why the governments are like that and loosely based, because people enjoy the exploits of being loosely based as well. This is why the Latin culture, and we know this, we Latin nations, we know how everybody get out. We Americans, we know who people are. We know what's going on. It's not a secret. It's not hidden. That's why a lot of back in my time, a lot of cats in my era, they was the first place they going to the DR. First place they going to clap cheeks and all that shit they be talking about at the DR. They want to go to Brazil. They want to go to all of these little nasty countries that do all these little nasty, little filthy favors that they like, because they got a freaky culture. And it is, you know what I'm saying? But, not saying nobody else ain't freaky, but you know what I mean? The reason why a lot of people go to these degraded countries, especially these rich people that do all of these humanitarian exploits. People sell their children to get money, to get rich. They sell their children like they ain't nothing. Look at how they do with in Africa with the dowry. The dowry, they were like, man, shit, you get up 20,000. What you worth? What you make a year? Man, what you got? To marry her, we need about 30 stacks. You know what I'm saying? That's in my eyes and the Black American eyes, how we see that shit is human trafficking. That's the same as human trafficking, but that's disrespectful to them. So I'm just telling you that we don't have those cultural ties. I ain't damn. But there are in ways, and even in Black culture, the man pays for his daughter's wedding. That's supposed to be some American in some instances. That's for the rich folks. Daddy play for little girl wedding, shit like that. And he give her away, and the dude, they go into that's some old lovey-dovey fairy tale shit. We don't normally get down like that in the Black community. We get it how we live, and most of the time, couples pay for their weddings, and that's just what it is. Shit. But that dowry and all of this, how a lot of these other cultures get down, you have to look at these actual behaviors and the actual shit that these other people will put up with for some money. Yes. There's some people that live good today because they have sold their children. And once they sold their child, they don't give a shit. They live good. Investment. I sell that motherfucker too. Sell them and don't feel shit. How you doing? You all right? Fuck it. I got rich. You want her? You want her? You want this girl? You want her? Don't mean nothing to me. That's another mouth for me to feed. I can get rich off of her. I give it to you now. She pretty, ain't she? Yeah, she pretty. Some people like that. In other countries, you can't do that with my daughter. I got click clacks and bang bangs for people like that. But anyway, that's how some people get down. That's how some cultures operate. And I'm just trying to make people aware that some people, that's how they feel. That's they scumbagish. They don't give a shit. That's their culture. Sell their children. Some men are attracted to their daughters. Another crazy psychotic trope. or their niece or somebody. They like it in the family. They don't care about what that does to the psyche. They don't give it. They won't. But that shit that's insane. You know what I'm saying? You can also you don't even have to be related to a niece or a nephew or anything like that. But when you fuck with a child, that's man, that's despicable. Or when you messing with your relatives, that's despicable. These things are these things should not happen because that's not civilized. That's not civilized. That is extremely uncivilized. And that's the one thing that you have to value about being in the human family. You have to behave and be civil. That's what makes us operate in a civilized society and behave in civil manner because you have to have boundaries. You have to have culture. You have to have tradition. And it has to be healthy culture and tradition because these are the things that keep people together and keep us growing so that we can establish families and build new communities and new proper relationships with good people in order to formulate healthy lineages. Understand that. Please understand that. It's very necessary for you to understand how your kid and even you as a child, your kid wants to be proud of you. And you should raise a child that you can be proud of. You shouldn't try to invest in them to sell them or to get rid of them. You got to do it's people parent how they want to parent, but that just, it's maybe because they was an incest baby or something like that. Some people don't have feelings like other folks. Some people think, certain aspects of existence are okay, and I just don't. I don't think that's cool. Incest is not a vital. It's a very toxic stain to cultures and the degradation of cultures. And when you know that your existence is coming to a close, that's what incest pretty much draws. When you're too attracted to what you are and don't understand that there's a world that we can literally have attraction to sustain life, building good relationships with people. That's the show tonight. I hope that wasn't too much of a stretch, but I really need people to understand that it's really good to think about, expanding your mind. Like I'm from Pensacola, Florida. I wouldn't want to marry anybody from Pensacola, Florida. I might be related to him. I don't want it. I'd rather go I married someone from Atlanta, Georgia. My people ain't primarily from here for generations. That's safe. We're not related. I don't want to be related to my significant other. And neither should you. Shit. Anyway, that's the show tonight. I love you guys. I appreciate you. I try to give you a little, this was a touchy subject. I tried to make it I tried to make it not cringy. I tried to be specific as I could so you could understand how these things came about. Gave you a little history as well. You need history and context. You have references as well. Like I said, we're going to get into more of these, the readings of these types of books so you can understand this hard truth, these hard histories, these things that you don't learn about in school. You have to be inquisitive to get these lessons. To get these real lessons, you got to keep your ear to the street, keep your mind open, and understand. Most of all, you want to understand sociology. You understand people. You want to understand how we actually get along, even in these tribal social norms that we have in our silos. We're getting to know each other now. Anyway, that's the Will of this podcast tonight, guys. Always get to know yourself so you can navigate through these, trying times. But check it out. Notice my favorite part of the show. The wheel is yours. Keep that in mind. Keep learning and stay alive. I salute y'all and I holler at y'all. Peace. That's the show.